G'day everyone, welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the podcast where two mates from all the way across the world have a yarn talking Packers football and the green and gold. I'm Nick Gregory, joined by my co-host Joe Pearson, as always, today breaking down yet another victory against the Bears and taking a chance to reflect on this season going into the bye. How do we feel about this week, Joe?
Well, it's a bye week, so I suppose we're feeling pretty good because you can't win it and you can't lose it.
Yeah, it's and it's nice to be coming off of a win for once, I think, and it's like, and I think in previous years we kind of felt a little bit stressful going into the bye. There was that whole thing where we were worse coming out of the bye, but it's there is something comforting that the season is effectively not really going anywhere.
I don't know. It jumped from 2% to what was it? One person I saw said 6%, and another one said 11.5%.
Yeah, it was.
So
that was kind of weird.
Our percentage is going right back up.
Yeah, I think I saw Domovsky tweeted 4.8. So I mean, I have absolutely zero idea. It's it's one of those things.
So see, the chances are getting better.
Yeah, I mean, there is still technically a way for us to get in, and I'm like, I don't know. I just don't really care anymore. Like, I'm here for the games, and whatever happens, happens. But I'm not praying we get in as I have in years past.
And I don't know if it helped or hurt, but it surely didn't. Well, I guess it really didn't hurt that the Commanders and the Giants tied. So
yeah, it seems like no matter how bad we are this season, everything else is just going to go right and give us the best chance to get in every single week. So we'll probably not get mathematically eliminated until the second last week.
I'm for it. I mean, if you think about the last time the Packers won the Super Bowl, it came down to Deshaun Jackson returning a punt return for a touchdown.
Yeah. I mean, if they get into the playoffs, I'm not gonna cheer against them, and I'm not going to pray that they tank, because a win is a win. Football is about watching the games. You don't just stop watching the games halfway through the season because you want them to get a better draft position. But I mean, it would be nice to have a top 10 pick to work with and things like that. But yeah, if they win games, I'm not going to boo them or be angry.
I was trying to think earlier today that who the last high first rounder we took was. And I think it was Rashawn at 9, wasn't it?
It took 12.
12. Okay, so then the last time that we picked within the top 10 had to be BJ Raji, because I know BJ was 9.
Yeah. Because I think that was the whole thing with Rashawn Gary, was that because that season was so bad, people were so miffed about that Jets win because it took us out of the top 10. And I think honestly, they would have taken Rashawn Gary either way, whether or not they were in the top 10. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that doesn't pick high often.
And you gotta take the right guys when you do, and it would be interesting to see what they would do if they did have a higher draft pick. So I mean, I'm not gonna root for them to tank, but I think it would be interesting to see what they would do with it. And I think the last time they took in the top 5 was AJ Hawk.
Was he a top 5 pick?
I think he was a top 5 pick.
Wow. Okay. Yikes.
I think he was number 5, but that's just me thinking off the top of my head. So if I do a quick Google search,
I mean, he was an athletic freak, so I don't get it, right?
Do you know the thing about him was that he was an athletic freak when he was in college, but he even admitted that he listened to the wrong people and he decided to bulk up.
Yeah.
And that's what hurt him when he went in. After he was drafted. Yeah, he was number 5 pick in the 2006 draft.
Wow.
So 2006 is the last time the Packers picked in the top 5.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, right.
So what? That's 16 years going on 17 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
It's crazy because the Packers are perennial, playoff contenders, and you don't see it happen that often. So with the way the seasons went, honestly, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if the Packers did, just to see what Gutekunst does.
Yeah.
Because the talk right now people are, oh well, maybe Goody can't draft after all. Such and such guy isn't doing nothing, and he sucks in the third round, and he sucks at this, and so it'd be interesting to see what he could actually do with a top 5 pick.
I think it is quite funny. This like the last thing I want to say here is like this how bad the third round draft pick history has been, even from like Ted Thompson. This is how like hilariously bad it has been for like 15 to 20 years now.
Yeah, it's been not great. I mean, there's been some guys in there that have done some things, but have never panned out completely. But, that's one of them mid rounds that, that's when you start taking your project type guys or guys that, are on the border, where they could be really super good or they're going to flame out. But the Packers seem to have a curse on them where they always tend to flame out.
And I think it's just even funnier because they are so good in the late rounds historically.
Usually second round and late rounds are pretty solid for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
First rounds are iffy.
Yeah. I think something I want to start talking about here is just kind of, and once again, as we do every week, this like go through kind of what's happening in the NFC. I think this was quite an eventful week, really, for like the shape of this conference.
Well, the Cowboys came back pissed off. They just demolished the Colts.
Yeah. They love to beat up on bad teams, and we kind of saw that last
year. Which makes them losing to the Packers even worse.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. And like I always say, the Packers, they always stick around against these better teams. They never really it's quite rare that the Packers truly get blown out. And we've seen it a few times the past couple of seasons, but against the Bills, we were still relatively there in that game. It wasn't like the complete destruction we've seen the Bills have on so many other teams, right?
Oh, I know, but with the points that the Cowboys have been scoring and the type of offense they've been having, it's crazy that it came down to the Packers winning, and
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You would have thought the Cowboys would have just steamrolled the Packers with the way the defense has been playing.
Yeah.
So, that's crazy. As for other games, I have to admit I didn't pay attention to too many of them. So,
yeah,
I did see some injuries. I think Trevor Lawrence went down, Stafford's down, so that's going to make the Rams game even more interesting, depending on how the Packers do against Miami. What other injuries were there? I know there was a couple other major injuries that.
Yeah, I think at least in
Garoppolo.
Yeah, Jimmy G. He's out for the season, which is that's a backbreaker for the 49ers.
Well, I'm going to sneak in here and also mention another newsworthy thing that the Panthers released Baker Mayfield. So now here's my new thought that the 49ers are going to pick up Baker, and then Baker's going to all of a sudden go on this tear. And
Nick Foles.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been a huge fan of Baker. He's a solid player, but he kind of reminds me of Kirk Cousins in a way where they were never going to be the star quarterback, but they were going to be a okay to decent quarterback.
Yeah.
And he's got to be the best quarterback the Browns have had since the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. As a player, he's so up and down sometimes, but I mean, those first couple seasons were just so exciting. I kind of lightly followed the Browns in those seasons, and just that game where he comes in for the injured Tyrod Taylor, and they come back and he's electric, and he's hitting these reads, and he's so decisive and so confident. Sometimes to his detriment now, but he was an exciting player to watch in those early seasons, and it's kind of a shame to see that especially the way that he went out in Cleveland, and who they replaced him with. I think
the guy that didn't do shit in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to take every single opportunity that I can to dunk on Deshaun Watson because he's a fucking scumbag. But I think if anyone can maximize what's left of Baker Mayfield, it's Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, and what was weird is I saw somebody tweet just like before we got on to record that one of the teams that would be the best situation for Baker would be the Packers, and that makes completely no sense at all unless Rodgers goes on the friggin' IR and they need a backup or something.
They'll
Yeah,
pull Blake
here's the
Bortles out of
tweets.
retirement again.
Yeah, 7 possible fits for Baker Mayfield: Saints, Falcons, Colts, Packers, Bucks, Rams, and 49ers. And,
Bizarre.
a few of them I understand. Saints, yeah, I could see it. Rams, yeah, definitely now that Stafford's hurt. Falcons, I could see it, but I could see them going to Desmond Ridder too. Colts definitely could see it, but there's no way the Packers would pick him up.
No, and he's not the prototypical Packers quarterback. They love these guys with humongous arms, and they kind of bank on the fact that they can coach them up. I mean, you look at all the backups that they've had in the past 10 years, and they all fit that archetype: big arm dudes who maybe it's questionable decision making, and they just they just hope that they can work with it.
Not necessarily. I don't think Etling has a big arm.
No, I mean, in terms of like legit backups, what they hoped Deshaun Kaiser could have been, Brett Hundley, even Tim Boyle to an extent. Before then, like I'm not so much Matt Flynn, but I think probably more in the past 5 years is what I'm thinking. My era of Packers knowledge is kind of like they all are generally like that. They were in on Drew Lock, right? And Jordan Love, of course, is that kind of guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the height requirement is kind of there too, because I think Baker's only at like 6 foot.
Yeah.
And the Packers do like the taller, yeah. So, but I don't know. I guess it would all depend. Like I said, the only chance that they would that there would be for him to come in is if Rodgers comes out of the bye week and is broken by eating too many shrooms and falls down the stairs or whatever the hell would happen to him, that he'd have to be put on IR for the rest of the season. And they brought Baker in as a backup because I really don't see Danny Etling being the backup.
Yeah, I mean,
if Jordan Love goes in.
Yeah.
So
I think in any case, I feel like whether or not the 49ers do get Baker, it's pretty heartbreaking for them. I mean, not that I actually really care because I don't like the 49ers, but, for that team, it's definitely heartbreaking to lose 2 starting caliber quarterbacks. And, the team that's been so hot this season, especially these last couple of weeks, arguably the best defense in the NFL now, and that array of weapons that they have. This was like an all-in season for them. And, D'Amico Ryan's probably gone next season as well. It's pretty brutal, I think, to lose their quarterback, and, they are realistically probably done from contention.
Who knows? Because Brock Purdy went in and helped led them to a win over the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean,
Iowa State alumni.
He's definitely not. He's not as bad as where he was drafted, I don't think.
I want him, even though it's the 49ers, I would love to see him lead the team to the playoffs and make a run in the playoffs. Maybe not get to the Super Bowl, but for him to have the title of Mr. Irrelevant, that would be like the icing on the cake for it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Another team that I want to kind of shine a bit of a light on is just the Lions. I don't know. It's a little bit maybe grotesque as a Packers fan, in the same division, but they're kind of like the little brother that never really does much, but you're like, they're so adorable and so bad all the time, but you kind of want to see them do something good. And I think this offense this season has been legit. I think, like the first, was it 4 or 5 weeks of the season, they actually led the league in scoring. And it was still now with Jared Goff at the helm, and they just got Jameson Williams back, but he's not really in the offense just yet. The guys that they're playing with, it's a good O-line, but the guys that they're playing with are not superstar receivers or skill position players, and they kind of, it's a very well run and well coached offense. And I think that, it's something a lot of people have been saying, that I think that Ben Johnson, the OC there, definitely could be up for a head coaching role next year or the year after.
I don't know. I think he'll stick around just to give it another year, because he may be up for it now, but if he comes back the next year and they build, like I keep saying, stack their successes, the offers are just going to keep pouring in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I think I definitely agree that he should stick around for another year. If nothing else, just for my pure entertainment value and just to keep the continuity. But I mean, you would have said the same thing about Matt LaFleur before he was hired, that he probably wasn't ready, right? I mean, you never know, but I just think what they're doing now is such like a nice blueprint and like such an attractive landing spot for a quarterback, whether that's a rookie or otherwise, blah blah blah. I just don't know. It is kind of nice to see them pick up a little bit because it sucks for any team to be horrible for as long as they have.
well, I will say they used to piss me off when I was a kid because all they would do is hand it to Barry Sanders, and Barry Sanders would kill the hell, just run the hell out of the ball over the Packers. But I've never hated them.
No, definitely.
Because they've never been that great of a team. Now, like I said, there's been times that they've pissed me off. Herman Moore, Barry Sanders, guys like that would just go off on the Packers, and they'd make it a hell of a game, and the Packers would win a few and lose a few. But I've never had anything really against the Lions. They do have a strong, core of young guys in there. I don't think even though Goff's been playing decent, I don't think he's going to be the guy to lead them. I really don't think they're going to end up with Lamar.
No.
I just, if they can get a quarterback in there, maybe get another, maybe get Jamison Williams, who was one of my draft crushes this past year. Had he not been injured, I think he'd have been the top receiver taken in the draft. I kind of had hoped that being that he was coming off the ACL, he would have dropped so the Packers could have traded up for him. But
yeah,
I just they have a core there, and it's they've got a head coach that I thought LaFleur was going to be, where he was going to be the leader. He was going to be that guy that you're either going to listen to me or you're off this team. And that's pretty much how it's been working for them,
Yeah.
This is how we're going to do things. This is what we're going to, how we're going to play games. You buy into it, I'll lead you to the promised land. And, even though everybody loves to make fun of them with we're going to bite their kneecaps off and stuff like that, that's the type of head coach you really kind of want, is that intense type of guy that can back it up.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I think also, just like a lot of it is the way that they play is so entertaining. And like MCDC, Dan Campbell, he's an entertaining personality, and sometimes as a head coach, that is more important than being a good schematic play caller or whatever. That's why you have coordinators. Like again, it's different for every single team, but as we've discovered this year, leadership is so important for a team, and I think that what they have is just such a great framework to build around. And and like even just like their O line, that's such a good room. Like that's a deep room, and it's something they can build their identity around. And they know that, they own it, they own that physicality. I have such a soft spot for this team.
Agreed. I would. If the Packers start going downhill, I'd hate to see the Lions start going uphill. As much as they deserve to, if the Packers really start going downhill after the Rodgers, whenever Rodgers retires, and whoever takes over, whether it's Love or some other draft pick or free agent or whatever, it's going to be really weird. Now, granted, I don't know much about losing seasons. I've had a few of them over the course of my life. I mean, there have been losing seasons, and I just barely caught the tail end of the latter part of the 80s, early part of the 90s. So I really don't know how it was to have continuous losing seasons. So It's going to be a weird feeling to see that whole trajectory go, where if the Packers start going down and the Lions start going up.
Yeah, and I think the thing that kind of that gives me faith in this team is that they are well run. They're we're very lucky with Green Bay that they are a model franchise. I mean, you look at the coaching trees that they have developed, the coaches that come from Green Bay and take inspiration from their time in Green Bay. Especially the Holmgren years in the 90s. Like you guys like John Gruden, Andy Reid, Doug Peterson. Like these guys kind of like the way they run, even like the coaching and the front office, it's been exemplary for so long. And I do expect us to eventually, once this bubble of the Rodgers era pops, to have a few years of mediocrity, whether or not that's with love. But I have faith in this team and the kind of the regime, the way they run things, that they will pick it up. I don't think there's a scenario where this team is just bad for like 5 or 10 years.
I don't know. It really will depend on what they do at quarterback after Rodgers is done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Love so far has seemed to have grown. So, I mean, he's been looking pretty solid in the limited time that he's gotten this year. So it's really going to depend on who they, like I said, who they go with. Does Love go out there and is he the starter? Do they draft, do they have a down year after Rodgers retires and, they get a high draft pick and they take somebody high in the draft? Do they go out and get a free agent? Do they,
Mm-hmm.
Whatever they do there is how it's going to work. Or, I mean, how it's going to determine what the Packers are going forward.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think I'm happy to start jumping into this game if you are.
Well, you got one more thing down here that I do want to touch on since I did mention Love, and that's the Gutekunst press conference today.
Yes.
I didn't listen to all of it. I did catch little sound bites here and there. But the one thing that has me confused, concerned, whatever you kind of word you want to put on it, was the comment he made that he was asked about Jordan Love's 5th-year option. And Gutekunst said that he doesn't expect him to, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing here, doesn't expect him to start at any point through the rest of the season, but he's seen enough out of him to make a decision on his 5th-year option.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really weird because you really haven't seen anything out of him. I mean, you have that little bit of the game that he played, which he looked pretty good in. But can you really determine? I mean, I always figured they were going to pick up his 5th-year option anyway, just because of the uncertainty of what Rodgers and his age and whatever. But that it was just a weird statement to me.
No, yeah, I think there's so many ways you can take it. And, I don't even saw the other part of that kind of question was that, they asked him if they thought that Jordan Love could be or is a starting quarterback in this league. And good, quite confidently said, yes, I think he is. And, I think it's a front office and, coaching staff that has been so high on him since they drafted him. These guys love him, and he's like Matt LaFleur's little baby, I think that in the way I interpret it, as you said, is kind of they're going to pick up that 5th-year option. And I'm not sure how they're going to manage this cap-wise and how it's all going to go. And I think even Rodgers is, he's not an idiot. He's aware of what this means for him, the implication of the next 2 or 3 years. I don't think that Rodgers makes it to 2024. But, it's just, as a team, this is a very difficult situation to navigate. And, we kind of all talk about this as fans. And, I'm at the point where I don't think that Love even starts a game this season anymore, barring some kind of injury. It's difficult and it's confusing. I don't think they envision themselves being in this position. And in some ways, it's good that Jordan Love, they know that he's good, or they think that he's good because they can at least deal him if they want to stay with Rodgers. But it's a bit of a sticky situation because, you're any way you cut it, yeah, you're dropping a Hall of Fame quarterback for uncertainty, right?
Yeah, but the way his contract is, I think the only way he's out of Green Bay is if he retires. I really just I don't see them trading him
Yeah,
or
no, I agree.
releasing him just because of the way his contract is.
I agree.
So if Rodgers decides he's going to play the next 3 years, then I think the Packers are stuck with him. So I just yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling that they're going to end up trading Love for whatever draft pick compensation they can get for him. And not this next year, but the following year, they're going to take another quarterback in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And, by then, that'll be the time for Rodgers' contract to be up. And whether he wants to retire or not, it's him being in Green Bay is no longer he has no say in it. Because the Packers are going to move on one way or the other because they're not going to give him another almost fully guaranteed contract to play 4 more years in Green Bay unless somehow he finds the fountain of youth and, go on whatever Tom Brady has been taken.
Avocados.
But yeah, I don't know. He's been sucking the souls out of somebody to stay in the league as long as he has. But the thing that I've always heard was Rodgers has stated that he wanted to play until age 40. Well, this year he turned 39. Next year he turns 40. So next year he'll have what? After the end of this season, he'll have what? 2 more years on the contract. After he turns 40, he'll have 2 more years on the contract.
Yeah, after he turns 40, he will 2 more years. Yeah.
So okay, let's give it to him. He can play till he's 42 as long as he's healthy and he can still do it. But then if I'm them, I'd probably say, all right, you're done. You either got to retire or you're going to be playing somewhere else. And I think he's going to take the retire option.
I think Rodgers' biggest thing, I think, is kind of a funny thing, but he's a guy that is very aware of his perception. I think he just really does not want to share a retirement year or Hall of Fame ceremony with Brady. And it sounds kind of funny to say, but I really think that that would drive him up the wall, knowing that he's sharing a year with Brady. So I think if Brady retires this offseason, I would bet good money that Rodgers comes back.
Well, like I said, I fully expect him back to finish out his contract. I don't see him just cutting it off in the middle of his contract. I just unless there's a major injury somewhere, if he's done too much damage to his thumb or whatever, I just don't see him cutting his contract short. So, and I get what you're saying. I completely agree. I don't think he wants to share the spotlight with Brady because he's always been compared with Brady, and whatever. But I just no. He'll finish out his contract. Now, whether Tom Brady's still playing or not, that could go into it. But yeah.
I think the last thing I want to say before we move on to this game is that I definitely think that it's not like since Rodgers was extended, it's no longer the likely scenario, the probable scenario that Love takes over eventually in any way. But Rodgers' contract is intentionally designed with outs for his retirement, and they went into it with the understanding that it could be a year-to-year thing. And Rodgers, I don't think he finishes the full contract personally, but it is designed intentionally with leeway for him to retire with that as a choice. So I think it leaves a lot of freedom on his end. But as you said before, he's in control. He has the leverage, and he has this team by the balls, if we're quite honest. So yeah.
You want to put a bet on it?
I haven't done too well on my NFL bets this year, so maybe not.
Are you sure? We can put a bet on it.
Oh, I would.
Like I said, I
would bet he doesn't
finish his contract. No, I think he will. We'll come up with the terms of the bet, but I bet you he'll finish out his contract. And like I said, unless he comes up with some kind of injury or his health, something comes up in his health or whatever, I don't see him not finish, because he always seemed to me to be the type of guy that wouldn't give up the contract.
Yeah, I mean, yes, we'll find out, won't we?
So we'll come up with some terms, but I'll bet you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, where do you want to start with this Bears game?
Oh, I know where you want to start, so go ahead and say it. I see it right here. Just this is your time. I'll give you a few minutes to
I mean,
go off on it.
Once again, I think anyone who listens to this show or knows me at all, I'm increasingly infatuated with Christian Watson. I mean, God knows my girlfriend is absolutely sick to death of me rambling about this random guy she doesn't care about. I mean, but minor announcement: my first ever Packers jersey is going to be Christian Watson. I mean, I
swear, if he starts going downhill after you get that jersey, no.
I take full responsibility. Absolutely, I agree. I'm terrified if he's going to turn into a pumpkin once I get this jersey.
I will completely dox you and give out your address so people can fly down there and just take turns putting their foot up your butt.
Yeah. I just think, I hate to sound like a broken record every week, but he's just, we're at the point now where he basically is this offense, and him and Aaron Jones together, if, it's together, they are what forms the basis of this offense. I mean, Stenovich said as much this past week. It's really that simple. Having a reliable perimeter option, a guy who can get open consistently on his own, whether that's through his route running, which he has shown that he's gotten better at, or his understanding of zone, or his this raw, unadulterated speed. Every single week, you just see these plays where you see him growing and getting better, and he pops off the field, and you have no choice but to watch him. I mean, you see, early in the game, that fourth down conversion for the touchdown, that second reaction play, those are the plays that get Rodgers to trust you. And the pure speed. I think there's probably, like I said last week, there's probably only one or two offensive players in the league who can even, be in the same discussion with him speed wise. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And, I think at the combine, he ran, was it a 4.28 and a 4.36 40. And it's looking more and more every single game like it's really that 4.2 number. And I don't know how true of a low 4.2 guy he really is, but I mean, goddamn, he's fast.
Okay, are you? Can I go now?
The last thing I'll say about Christian Watson is that also, every single touchdown in this game was scored with him or via his influence. The two touchdowns that he scored on his own, and him serving as a distraction on that AJ Dillon play. He's special. I love him.
I mean, you pretty much said it, but I'll say I have to backtrack a little bit on him. Even though, if I remember right, I did say that if there were a lot of ifs, I kept saying that he reminded me of MVS, but if he were to learn learn the routes better, learn the concepts better, he would be the better, he would be better than MVS. So I'm glad he's starting to get that stuff figured out to where he can be the player he is. Mm-hmm. Now I will temper expectations because, there is a chance that he could have the sophomore slump next year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's great what he's doing now, but, too many people start praising too early, and then when the slump happens, they quickly turn on him and want him gone.
No, I totally
mean, we've
agree.
seen it way before on Devontae. they all wanted Devontae gone. They all
Mm-hmm.
wanted, I do remember
MVS.
that they were, well, MVS though, but MVS caused a lot of his own stuff because he never seemed to grow within the offense. He just continued to be the same type of person player he was. Uh, but I was going to say, I do remember when Jordy, there were a lot of knocks on Jordy early on.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm going to temper it. I am enjoying it right now. He has been on fire. So I just, like I said, I want to, it, I say this week in, week out, let's stack successes.
Mm-hmm.
And if he continues on and next year he shows even more and all that stuff, then yeah, I can say we got our true number one again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really hoping Dobbs would play against the Bears just so we could have both of them out on the field because I think that would have opened up the offense even more. I was glad Torrey got some snaps and got a catch, but
Yeah.
I'm wishing that they get him involved more.
Mm-hmm.
But it's great to see that second round receiver success is continuing on.
Yeah. And yeah, and he's, I think the MVS comp is one that stuck to him prior to the draft, and I think it's not fully accurate, but even aside from all that, those semantics and stuff, he is already better than MVS, and he's already more valuable to this offense than MVS ever was. His ability to create on his own is just, fantastic.
But at the time he was drafted, the MVS comps were warranted because it was all the same. They came from a small school. They were bigger guys. They were fast guys. They had drop issues and they had limited route trees. And that's where a lot of people saw it. But after seeing what he's been able to do, that's where you can start taking away the MVS comps, other than speed and size.
I think the biggest thing that separates him from MVS is that as an athlete, he is practically an alien. I mean, he is one of the top three best athletes at the wide receiver position, like ever. Next to only like Calvin Johnson, maybe T.O. His like his pure fake physical ability, the acceleration, the agility, the toughness, the strength that he has, it's not even comparable to MVS. The only thing that MVS has that is similar is really the straight line speed. But I mean, like you see it. He's a big guy, so he's still lanky to an extent. But I mean, he's such more of an easy mover than MVS ever has been. And like his ability to kind of shift and jiggle a bit, he's got movement skills, And like, again, I hate for this to become the whole Christian Watson segment, but I mean, it's just so easy to gush about him.
Right, but like I said, at the time that he was coming out for the draft, that's where the MVS comps made sense. But now that he's gotten into play, that's where you can do away with it.
Sure.
I know you're wearing the Christian Watson tinted glasses, so you don't. But at the time that he was drafted, the comps were warranted because they were very similar. I mean, if you've ever watched anything of MVS in college, you would have thought, and he did have some of these comps early on because obviously he was working out with the guy, but he was getting Randy Moss comps coming out of college.
Yeah, I
That
do remember that.
if he was to pick up like Christian Watson is now, he would have been the second coming of Randy Moss. So, it's the comps were fair then, but they're not fair now, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, sure. I'll let you take over for this next couple of points because I've definitely just obliterated the schedule there.
Oh, I don't. Who needs a schedule? Well, obviously David Bakhtiari not playing, and I know a lot of people were kind of shocked at that and started belly aching about it, to put it mildly, until they found out what actually happened. And I know it had to be a scary situation because even Bach tweeted that I was having some stomach issues and I thought I strained strained my abdomen or pulled a muscle or whatever. So I went and talked to the doctor, and the doctor rushed me right to the hospital for emergency surgery. So I mean, but Zach Tom's filled in pretty good for him. And he did again this game. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think Rogers was hit once. Was he
I
hit?
think he had two pressures, one from Tom and one from Myers. But I mean, watch the game. I mean, he's out there just dancing for like 10 seconds on some of these plays.
Right. So I mean, it's like they didn't miss a step. And I was talking earlier on a message board that somebody brought up what the Packers should look at in the draft, and one of them said offensive line, and I got to thinking, I go, yeah, the Packers will probably end up taking an offensive lineman because they always do in every draft.
Mm-hmm.
But even if they lose a guy, like let's say Yash, even though they put a restricted free agent tender on him, some other team signs him. You've got so many other guys that they can plug in there right now that I don't see offensive line being this huge uh,
Mm-hmm.
need. Even though, like I said, the Packers always seem to take at least one offensive lineman in every draft, so it
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprising. But they, other than maybe they need to get rid of Royce Newman, uh, I just I don't see them missing a step even if they were to lose one guy.
Yeah, and I think talking about comps to previous Packers players, I think we've made this like once or twice on this podcast, but Zach Tom is just so similar in a lot of ways to David Bakhtiari. I mean, looking at them physically, not exactly the same like stature, but a lot of the RAS measurables are quite similar, and just like even just on the principle, he's a fantastic natural pass blocker already in year one. He's such like a talented pass protector, but he struggles to move guys in the run game. He can raise guys through an angle. He can kind of wall them off, but he's not pushing guys and like moving big D linemen out the way. But again, it's a team that passes most of the time or aims to pass a lot of the time. He's such a nice piece because he is such a fantastic pass blocker already.
But see, I don't see the Bakhtiari comp. I was always comping him more towards Elton just because they had the versatility. Last year before the injury, Elton Jenkins could play all over the line and they wouldn't miss a beat. Now, since the injury, he's struggled in other positions. But, Zach Tom seems like that guy that could fill in at every spot and the line wouldn't miss a beat.
Yeah, I think
So,
definitely. I definitely like he definitely is a versatile player, like more probably than Bakhtiari is. I just think, again, for me personally, I think because he's such like he's a bit of a lighter framed O lineman, and as that's the reason why Bakhtiari fell so much is because he's like a bit of a lighter frame, like the kind of strength concerns. I think Elton is quite a chunky guy, and not like in a way where he's like bouncing along, but he's like he's definitely more of a stronger player than Zach Tom is. And Zach Tom is, what we would call, on Madden, the finesse score is a little bit higher, I guess you would say. But yeah, I mean, they're both nice players, and I would love for Zach Tom to be around this team for a long time.
oh, I do too. And I keep saying that I have a feeling that Elton Jenkins will be gone. I know I get told that, oh, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. They're going to lock him up. They're going to lock him up. But because of his age, even though he's not old by any means, but he's older than what the Packers are used to. I think he was 24 at the time that he was drafted.
Yeah.
So he'll be 28 by the time his contract's up. So
Yeah.
that's usually older than what the Packers usually draft. So I could see them easily moving on and plugging in, Runyon and Tom or whoever. And it just, like I said, I right now outside of a couple players, mainly Newman and I just forgot his name, Hanson. I think you could plug anybody else depth wise in there, and you're not going to miss a beat.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be an interesting thing moving forward with him. or with
Yeah.
them.
I think, yeah, like exactly like you said, I think coming into this season, it was almost like a certainty that Elton was going to be extended. But I really shifted on this the past couple of weeks. I feel like it's either Bakhtiari or Jenkins is going to be on this team next season, and they're going to have to pick one because I mean you can't have. I mean, like they're both such nice players, and I would personally pick Elton, but for two guys who like cost so much, or Elton will cost a lot. It's quite difficult to justify both of them, especially if Bakhtiari ends up, being more of an in and out kind of guy, a la, like a Brian Balaga, right? Who was like so reliable when he was healthy, but is plagued by injuries. There's a lot kind of like happening on that line, but with the amount of money that's getting spent everywhere else on this team and the plethora of extensions that need to give, guys like Rashawn Gary or like or Elton Jenkins, or what's going to happen with Aaron Jones, etc. It's like they need to figure out where they're going to focus their money coming into a down year, and I have a tough time seeing both of them on the team as big extensions.
I don't see Bach being gone, because there's not much cap relief if they do release him.
Well, they could trade him rather.
I still don't think there's much cap relief either way. I think either way, it's a 10 million is all they're gonna save, and they'll have a ton of dead money.
Right.
So and unless he has some kind of setback or whatever, I think Bakhtiari is going to be back. The interesting one that you just mentioned is Aaron Jones, and I know we kind of skipped over the game, and we should probably be talking about the game. So I'm just going to say the interesting one is Aaron Jones, and we can continue that later on. So.
No, yeah, I think we'll go more into this next week in the bye once we kind of talk about the off-season plan. But no, definitely.
So yeah, let's go ahead and move back to the game.
Yeah,
AJ Dillon has continued to look pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
He's been weird though, where he'll go on stretches where he looks like this, like Derrick Henry 2.0, and then he'll go on stretches where he just disappears. So it's good to see him starting to heat up at the right time.
Yeah.
Defense, my man, defense. Where are they?
Yeah.
This defense that was hyped up to be a top 10, if not top 5 defense, and now they're like bottom 5 defense.
It's rough. It's rough, man. I think, yeah, like I think.
What's really weird?
What's that?
The Bears followed the same type of game plan that the Eagles did, where, okay, well, we got a running quarterback, so we're just going to force feed a ton of running, QB runs on you. And it was working there for a while. I mean, Fields broke off the 56-yard touchdown run, and it looked like the Bears were just going to trounce the Packers like the Eagles did. And then all of a sudden they stopped running Justin Fields.
Yeah. I think, this defense is just like, even when they play well in spots, it just seems like every single quarterback that plays them has a career day in one way or another. I mean, depending how much weight you put into PFF grades, blah, blah, blah. Justin Fields was the highest graded PFF quarterback this week. But I mean, he still passed for the highest yards he has all season. He rushed, like you said, he had those big rushing plays in the first and second quarter. And there's this really funny interaction I saw on Twitter from Zach Jacobson and Ben Fennell. Zach was like, "Oh, kudos to Joe Barry. The defense did like adjust, and Justin Fields didn't rush much in the second half." And Ben Fennell said, "Well, how did they adjust exactly?" And it's like you can't really give an answer because it just, like you said, it just seemed like they just stopped doing it. I have no doubt in my mind that if Justin Fields wanted to, he could have ran all over them, but it seemed like they just kind of got away from it.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense because I think if he would have continued, now it could have been that his shoulder was bothering him and he didn't want to take the hits, or whatever. But it's crazy that that's what happened because they were running. And then when he was throwing the ball outside of a couple of big throws, which we can talk about, Jair.
Yeah.
he really wasn't this world beater in the passing game. And he made a couple of big mistakes late, the interception to Jair and the interception to seal the game by Keyshawn Nixon. But
I will say that interception that Jair got was not Fields' fault. It was a pretty bad route from I think it was Nikhil Harry or no, it was EQ, right? But
no, it was EQ.
yeah, but still, yeah, no, I agree. I don't think he was necessarily the best quarterback in the league on the weekend, but yeah, I mean, he had he put up numbers against his defense, like you said.
Well, they came in chunks, and the first pass to, I want to say that one was to Nikhil Harry. I don't know what the hell was going on with Jair. I don't know how he let Harry get past him, because Nikhil Harry, one of the big knocks on him was he had no speed.
Yeah.
So how do you let a guy get past you that has no speed when you're a 4-2 guy?
Yeah, I think. I think when I know what you're talking about, where like Jair ends up kind of being close at the end of the catch, but I mean he got totally like smoked at the start. I think. Yeah, it's like I think like this team really loves to play down to opponents that they think are worse than them, and Jair has had zero respect for any of these receivers. I mean, he said as much after the game, but you watch him on that play, he like within the first 5 yards, he kind of runs down and like is like looking at Fields to try and intercept something. And then by the time he turns around, Nikhil Harry is already bloody 10 yards down the field. It's like kind of like a second reaction scramble play, but it's brutal. It's brutal.
Well, and then the second play, I could have these flopped around too, but the one, I think the next one was Equanimous, and that one, it looked like the communication was off. Because you could see Jair motioning like, okay, what the hell's going on here? And that's where, and I'm, like I said, I could be off on, because I'm having a hard time remembering which one was which, but he was waving or whatever, trying to figure out what was going on. And it was like a stop and go route, and he jumped the stop route, but the receiver ran past him and he had to catch up to him, and that was a deep pass that was completed. So I don't know if I can blame that one fully on Jair if he's not getting the information he's needing. Now, the other one I fully put on Jair. He definitely did not play it right.
Yeah.
So
he gambled.
I don't know.
Absolutely gambled in this game.
And I know I know he's been polarizing with a lot of people, or a lot of Packer fans, because of him running his mouth. And I understand it. If you're going to run your mouth, you need to make the plays. But I've been kind of enjoying it.
Yeah,
and I know we talked about this with Todd last week, but I love it because that shows that they have a spark.
Yeah.
This defense has been so lethargic that, I think Jair's finally had enough and has just finally let his personality out. And I'm along for the ride.
And the thing that blows my mind is people are like, oh, Jair has an ego. I'm like, have you seen literally?
He does.
Have you seen literally any cornerback on any team in any level of football in your life? Because like it's a fundamental part of playing cornerback is you need to have confidence and an ego. You need to think that you can stop the receiver in front of you in every play. No corner goes into a game thinking, oh, I'm going to get beat today. Oh, this is not going to be a good day for me. That's not how it works. Like whether or not they say it is a different matter, and maybe he could express it in a slightly more family friendly way. But who gives a shit, really? He is a good player. You don't people who like talk crap. You don't just talk crap when you're winning. That's not how that works. I mean, I think we both kind of agree on this. Like it's fun to watch anyway.
I've been enjoying it. I'm along for the ride.
Yeah,
I'll go with it. I mean, now it's going to get old and sickening if he continuously gets beat and doesn't make any plays. But, I'm there for it.
Yeah. No, yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think so. Something I kind of want to highlight a little bit because I think the corners have been pretty up and down, but like like you pointed out kind of here before the show, is like Kingsley and Agbury, or JJ and Agbury, playing quite well as a rookie, I think is something that is really fun to see.
Now, I'm going to argue with you because I watched the whole game and they pronounced his name Enigbare.
Hey, I go off a video that he posted of him saying his own name, so that's my source.
I know, but every time I watch every game, they pronounce it Enigbare.
I mean, it was also Tonyan for 3 years, right? So.
Well, I understand that, but it confuses the hell out of me because every time I turn on the game, and which is great that they keep calling his name and he's making plays, but they call him Enigbare. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I wish these guys would get simple names.
I'll find the video and then I'll send it to you if I can find it, because like, that's the way he pronounced it. But again, but he's cool. I love to watch him. I love to watch him produce, and especially like as an edge rusher, 5th round. I mean, you hardly ever see a late round edge rusher
and a low RAS scar. I know that was a big knock on him, was he had a low RAS scar. Well, who the fuck needs a RAS score when he's making plays every game?
Yeah. I think he's at edge. It's a hard position to produce if you're not physically gifted, right? But the comparison that I make, if you want to be like, again, the Packers comparison, is like Za'Darius. He's almost a carbon copy athletically of Za'Darius. The length and the kind of lack of explosiveness in some areas, but the technique and the hand fighting to make up for it. He's fantastic.
I kind of have the opposite. I think he's more similar to Preston, but maybe a little bit more explosive.
Right.
Za'Darius had speed. I would put Rashawn Gary and Za'Darius together. But I think Kingsley looks more like a Preston, but like a little bit more explosive Preston.
Yeah, I think in my head, Preston is kind of that guy who's like the big chunky mover. He'll kind of like throw you out of the way. And Za'Darius is kind of like a bit more slippery, like will kind of like make you fall over your own legs a little bit. And Rashawn Gary is the guy who would just like maul the entire line at
once. Right, but Rashawn is more of a speed guy, which was more like what Za'Darius did. I just Kingsley is another one that looks like he can maul the hell out of an offensive lineman. And I think add that with his little bit more explosiveness, that he's just an explosive Preston Smith.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying anything against. It's been great.
No, yeah. And yeah, I think he maybe I misread this, but I think he leads rookies in pressures, or is like near the top for like pressures of like
I think he's top 5.
Yeah.
I think he's top 5. I don't know if he's the top, but I know he's top 5.
Yeah. And I guess it is kind of a shame because I had confidence in him to be a third edge kind of coming into the season. But the Joe Barry system, the actual like schematic like philosophy of it is not actually that bad, but it really relies on having a fantastic pass rush, because ideally they basically never blitz, and losing Rashawn and replacing him with Kingsley, who's he's for a rookie he's good, but in the grand scheme of things not top 5 edge rusher. You just lose so much of that ability to stop players, and no pressure. And you see in this game, they really struggled to get consistent pass rush, even with like a better performance from Kenny Clark and whatever. But it's a shame to see what could have been, because they were veritably better with Rashawn Gary on the field, right? It just kind of sucks that we don't get to see all these players at once together.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been great to see a Rashawn with the Kingsley we've got right now.
Yeah.
So I suppose we better talk about some of the lows, even though we've already mentioned some of them. The one that I put down and it's not really like a low. I understand where it's coming from, but I just think it's more that they need to like communicate. Bisaccia needs to communicate this, but I think Keyshawn Nixon needs to learn that he doesn't always have to take the ball out of the end zone, especially when it's like 7 yards deep in the end zone.
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely. Yeah, I definitely agree. He needs to kind of grow a little bit out of that. I think maybe he's because he's part of a few of these big runs. He feels the confidence, which is great. But yeah, it is okay to kneel sometimes. That is an option.
Yeah, or just don't catch the ball and let it go out the back of the end zone.
Yeah.
But like I said, it may not be a low, but it does need to be something that they need to work on.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree. And for a second, I just want to say that he definitely popped off a little bit and has been popping off a little bit on the defensive side of the ball. I want them to keep him around as a nickel, depending on his price tag. But he's fun, he's energetic, and he plays with passion.
But see, that's like Todd mentioned last week. You want to you want to keep these guys, but we always seem to find that guy that has bounced around and then he comes in playing for his life and he plays out of the world and then they sign him for a big contract and he disappears.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd love to keep him around, but it's definitely going to depend on what that price tag is.
No, absolutely. Speaking of segue here, speaking of potential price tags going into next season, I don't think that is any way that Tunyon gets extended from this team unless it's for like dirt cheap money. He is just, granted ACL tear or whatever, but if this is what he's going to look like off of an ACL, it's just not there. There's no explosiveness, and I mean, he doesn't block. It's hard to justify any kind of meaningful resource allocation towards Tunyon. I mean, where are you at on this?
I'm at that I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's going to get a huge contract no matter what he does because he just doesn't have the production in his career.
Mm.
I just think they haven't been using their tight ends, period. I mean, you're not even seeing DeGuara get any kind of real.
Yeah, that one's baffling to me.
Real attention. You're not really getting a lot of Mercedes Lewis attention. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I just think it's how they're using the tight ends right now, which is really weird considering the LaFleur system uses tight ends. So,
yeah,
I don't think it's anything to do with the player himself. Now, he might be struggling a little bit just recovering from the ACL. I mean, him and Elton suffered the ACL tear relatively within a couple weeks of each other. So we saw Elton, and we saw Elton kind of struggle until recently recovering in that. So I mean, Tunyon could be struggling a little bit with it too. So I mean, I know I keep saying but I really don't know what the issue is there. I think it's a combination of everything. Them not using the tight ends, him still battling back from the injury, the offense as a whole not really being there. And he's never been a blocking tight end. I mean, he had some ability and he's knocked some people on their asses and stuff like that, but he was never meant to be more of a blocking. I think that's why they went out and brought in Mercedes Lewis to kind of help coach him and to be that strict blocking tight end.
Yeah.
So
I just wonder Mercedes Lewis. I love him so much, but
I love that guy.
Yeah.
But I really don't know what to say there. He possibly could be back, but it's not. Or even if he goes somewhere else, it's not going to be for an exorbitant amount of money. It's going to be probably a couple $1 million and for a year or two just to see what's there. And if they're going to do it, that's all he's going to take, then he might as well just stay with the Packers.
Yeah, no, I agree. I would love to see them take someone like Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Not
well, the
with
big one is the guy out of Notre Dame,
Michael Mayer.
Mayer.
Yeah. I just think it's
Sam Laporta from the University of Iowa.
I mean, tight end you, right?
I will tell you this, and we can get into this more in the offseason when it's time to do the draft. As much as I would love to see the Packers pick him up, I don't think Laporta is going to go very high because the big issue with him is his hands. He can block, he can run routes, but there's been times the ball's hit him right in the hands and he's dropped it. So I don't think he's the second coming of George Kittle or TJ Hawkinson or even Noah Fant. So I love the guy as a Hawkeye. I hope he has a great career, but he's not going to be a high draft pick.
Yeah, I think this get someone who's like physically talented and can catch a ball and just like work with them. I think we've kind of seen him, with the exception of Kyle Pitts, who I think is just being misused. Drafting a tight end high, like a first round tight end, it's not really a thing. I mean, it's just like not worth it. It's really not worth it to draft a tight end like.
Well, it depends on who you take, because like I said, Hawkinson went first, Noah Fant went first.
But I mean, none of them have been justified, really. I mean, Hawkinson's a good player, but like top 10 player, not in that draft.
I don't know. I'd have to go through and look at first round tight ends. I mean, you had Kyle Rudolph. He was a pretty solid.
Yeah, but it's never worth it, though. I mean, if you look at the top tight ends in the league, none of them are ever really
but you can say that about a lot of positions. I mean, is it worth it taking a first-round running back when most of your running backs come from the late
Absolutely
rounds?
Not.
Same for offensive linemen. Is it worth taking offensive linemen in the first round when more of your offensive linemen come from, later rounds? So, I mean, it's not fair to say that it's not worth taking them in the first round.
I mean, only if they're like an exceptional talent, like Kyle Pitts. I mean, Kyle Pitts was drafted and he come in and he was like already a top 10 tight end.
I don't know. We can get more into that when it comes to the offseason and we start looking at the draft, and I'll argue with you all day long about it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm basically done with this game. I think, it's kind of like, we're looking more towards kind of we're not really looking towards the playoffs and kind of what we can do in the playoffs anymore. I think we're looking to see how this team is doing on the weekly and kind of what we're getting out of our players.
And let's be honest, we're just wasting time because we don't have a game to preview this next week. So we're just trying to fill stuff in.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, with this lack of a preview, kind of, the space we have, I would just like to take a moment to talk about, what do you think happened this season? I mean, why do you think we are where we are? I mean, I don't even know our record. That's pretty bad. I think it's like 5-8. I mean,
coaches, lack of adjustments, lack of leadership. No, because the players are there, and you can see it game in and game out that there's players there. But when you've got coaches that aren't wanting to adjust, or maybe it's not that they don't want to adjust, maybe it's that they don't know how to adjust, or you got coaches that aren't wanting to lead, or you got no leadership in the locker rooms. I think that's a lot of it. That's why I have no problems with what Jair's doing. I wish he would do more of it in the locker room to, get the guys going and all that. But there's nobody there to lead. And I think that's the big issue.
Yeah. I think, someone raised this point to me, on Twitter or whatever, that, when Matt LaFleur came in, yes, he was like a leader, but I think the whole thing that he had was kind of empowering the players to lead their own locker room. And like you said, when there's no leadership in the locker room and you're not giving them much leadership to go off of and you're relying on them, it's pretty difficult to kind of keep them going through these tough periods. That first year or second year, the big off-season spending year where we had Za'Darius, Amos, and the exciting new rookies, and then I think that was Marsetti's first year, right? You had this big influx of veterans and leadership and energy, and like, yeah, it's great. They can run the locker room, and that's a fun place to be. But when those guys start to come off, and the rookies have to step up, and the draft picks have to step up. It's tough to just supplement that and go do it yourself. You need someone who can like grab the reins and no, I'm a head coach. I'm taking control. We're in this thing. Kick up the ass kind of thing. I definitely agree. Leadership.
Well, I've said that since the beginning of our podcast that it seems like LaFleur really stepped away from the leadership role that he originally came in with. Because I know I mentioned this conversation before that I had went up to training camp the year that he was hired, and I was really, I mean, it was really exciting to see because he was busting players' balls. Uh, the week that I was up there was the week that they had the joint practices with the Texans, and a couple of the players got in this ruckus, and
Yeah.
how they all get in there. Well, Matt LaFleur was right in the middle of everybody pulling people apart and yelling and all this stuff. And I went back because I was staying near my grandpa, and my grandpa goes, "Well, how's the new coach looking?" And I said, "This is what I really told him." I said, "This guy has a lot of Lombardi vibes to me because he had no problem getting in there and telling these guys what they needed to do,
Mm-hmm.
yelling at these guys because they were doing something wrong." But he still had that vibe of being a nice guy to where, I know I mentioned this one too, where Jerry Kramer always said that, or has a story where there was one practice where, he messed something up and Lombardi was just riding his ass. And Kramer said that I went back to the locker room and I couldn't there was no way I could play for this guy. There was, there was nothing I could do that was right. And Lombardi walked in the locker room and mussed his hair and said, "You're going to be an all-pro kid." And Jerry said, "Well, that changed my mind in a heartbeat." And I said LaFleur had a lot of that vibe to me,
Mm-hmm.
where he could yell at a player, but then go back in and say, "Hey, kid, you're going to be the greatest of all time." So, but then something happened. I don't know if it was the Rodgers hissy fit. I don't know if it was something else, but he just kind of lost that drive.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah.
So I don't know. It's really weird.
Yeah, I think and definitely the lack of like leadership from the top down is definitely a thing. To me, I mentioned this before, but I think the biggest story for me of this season is kind of we talk about how much talent was on this team, and yes, that's true, especially name value. But I think a lot of this team just hadn't performed up to their usual standard or like previous season standard, specifically on the defense. I mean, what was supposed to be the heart and soul of this team is, as you said before, it's a flat out disappointment. I mean, they were supposed to be top 10, maybe top 5, but it's so many players just regressed or got lazy, or someone like Adrian Amos just fell off the cliff, maybe like physically. Just so much regression, and for all the knocks on Joe Barry, which a lot of them are warranted, you can't you can't scheme around a player playing like shit.
No, you can't. But it's also the coach's job to put the players in to where they're going to succeed.
Yeah.
So if you've got a guy who's struggling in a position, you should be able to pull him from that position and put somebody else in there. And if
Yeah.
you can't see that on the field, then you're not going to, then what good are you?
Yeah. I think, I'm not the big hater of most of what Joe Barry does for like scheme wise. But I think in terms of like communicating that to his players, I mean, it seems like they are perpetually confused and having communication breakdowns, which definitely is a coaching problem. The refusal to tackle, the lack of discipline. It's so strange because that was his thing coming in, was that he was going to get these guys to tackle, even if they weren't picking off every single ball or whatever. They were going to play solid defense. They would rally, blah blah blah, fundamentals, and it's the complete opposite. I mean, they don't do anything well, really.
They haven't. And, I will admit that I've not. I've never was a big fan of the Barry hire. I did kind of back off of it last year and the year before, or I backed off of it last year because he's only been there
Yeah,
2
I was
years,
gonna
right?
say, yeah,
I You got to remember, my mind is shot. There's so many different things running through my head, and the way the defensive coordinators have went through Green Bay, they all seem to be the same after a while.
mm,
But I did kind of back off of it afterwards because it seemed like the defense was on the ups, and now it's back down to where it looks like the Detroit Lions 0-16 team all over again.
yeah. It's pretty brutal, pretty brutal. Um, I mean, yeah, with all of the negatives, which there's been a lot. I still feel happy watching this team a lot of the time, and it's still fun to watch a lot of the time. I mean, where are you at as far as the biggest bright spot of this team for you?
I don't know if I have one.
Yeah, you do.
I I mean, it's really hard to say bright spot because there's not really anything that has been a bright spot. I mean, you've got some
That's
dim
not true.
spots.
That's not true. Think about individual players. I mean, you know my player who I love this season, but like
Yeah, but
someone,
even then, it just now started to glow with him. Because
yeah,
think about it, after the first drop pass of the season, they really didn't go back to him, and he struggled after that. But it wasn't until it became necessary for him to get involved that he started picking up. So now he's starting to shine, but it started out as a dim spot.
yeah,
So
but
that's what I'm saying.
now it's a bright spot.
There's not like this big sun looking thing. It's more like a light bulb that was going out type of light. I mean, Aaron Jones has been pretty solid, but he's had his ups and downs. Where they weren't using him and all that stuff. The wide receivers weren't looking great. Dobbs was looking all right, but then the injury took him out, and he had his struggles. So I mean, it's really hard to find a true bright spot.
No,
There's a lot of little dim spots, but I can't really point to a huge bright spot. Maybe the special teams hasn't been as shitty as they have in the past
I mean,
decade.
they're not far off, if I'm perfectly honest. The Bisaccia has not been as good as he should have been.
Yeah, but you got to look at what they were coming from.
I mean, like the amount of hires
dead
that they
last
made,
in the league.
the amount of hires that they made for Bisaccia, and like when you still see how many blocked field goals we had this season, which is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that he was
I
clinging
think
onto
there's
Murray
something
Rogers
off
for
with
so
Mason.
long. Oh no, absolutely. Like,
well,
the way that Mason kicks now has fundamentally changed. I think he needs to be like done after this season. But still,
I think he is by his own choice.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, definitely, like, he's definitely been a bit of a disappointment. I mean, there are spots where it's shined, but like there's still a lot of things that are wrong on the special teams that are kind of unexpected.
Oh, there is. I'm not saying they're like top in the league or anything, but they're night and day compared to what they had been.
That's true. Yeah, I think for me, the fact that the biggest bright spot, I mean, is for me obviously is going to be Christian Watson. And I think just like not even just Christian Watson. I think it's just the influx of offensive talent as far as like what we drafted this year has been quite promising. I have full faith that Dobbs and Watson is going to be a good combination. How good that is, we'll see. But the fact that Watson is going to finish the season with over 10 touchdowns on himself as a rookie is amazing. And Dobbs probably would not have been far off in terms of yardage, etc.
Okay, I got one. I just thought of it. Bakhtiari, for a guy who hasn't played for 2 years to come in and play as much as he has and as well as he had, that's got to be a bright spot.
Well, there you go.
So there, I did find one.
There you go. But yeah,
that's it.
That's kind of where I'm at. The offense has picked up through the season, and it's by no means is it perfect, but it's still fun to watch, especially the past 3 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know what else I can add because, like I said, I know I've been optimistic about the season, but I've been pretty pessimistic about the team as a whole.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, I don't see it as a big bright spot. Like, it's not like last year's 13 and what were we, 13-4 or 14-3 or
13-4,
whatever it was. That you can pick off, okay, well, Devontae Adams was amazing, or this guy was great, or whatever. This year it's been meh. Truly it has. And I know you're wearing the Watson colored glasses.
No, as a whole, for
and
sure.
You think, but it's just been a whole lot of meh. Yeah, you got some good spots here and good spots there, but it's not amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Where are you at with the leadership of this team as far as like going into the future with Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur? How are you feeling about both of those? I mean, they're both extended, right? I mean, like, where are you at with that?
Right, they were extended this offseason, so they're unless one of them decides to step down, they're not going anywhere for at least a couple years. But Gutekunst I'm there with because I think he has made a lot of the right decisions, and as long as he keeps Russ Ball on staff, they're going to be in a pretty good, solid place when it comes to, building the team. LaFleur, I think if he can get back to the way he was in 2019, I think we would be a lot better off. But that would mean he would have to step up and stand against Rodgers.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that'll happen or not, but I think it needs to. And I think LaFleur is starting to kind of see that. So
yeah, I definitely think
I really think that unless something happens to where this year becomes the norm for the next couple years, that LaFleur will be here longer than Rodgers just to see if LaFleur has the same success without Rodgers. If you get what I'm saying.
No, yeah. I think I just think that, blah, 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 he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, whatever. But the influence he has on this team is not healthy. One player, no matter how good they are, no matter how important they are, should never be above the team or above the coaching staff. Every player needs a kick in the ass now and then, and every coach needs a kick in the ass now and then. It's just because he has been so good previously does not absolve him of any responsibility. And I think once or if they ever separate, you will see, a more confident Matt LaFleur and someone who can really do exactly what he wants to do. Whether that's good or bad, we'll see. But yeah,
that's what I mean. I think I fully expect Rodgers to finish out his contract. So as of right now, that's 3 more years.
Mm-hmm.
So I think LaFleur will at least be here at minimum 4 more years, because I think they'll give him 1 more year after Rodgers is done, just to say, okay, well, now this is your team. Let's see you have the same success.
Yeah.
And then we can judge him off of that to say, okay, well, he's having the same success even without Rodgers, so he's a pretty good quarterback. I mean, pretty good head coach.
Coach, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to cover for this team before we finish up?
No, I think we're pretty good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, look. Well, next week we're going to be taking a look at kind of a brief preview into like our off-season plan, what we think the team should be doing, and what the future might look like. But that's all topics for next week. That's all we have for this week, guys. If you could take a second just to rate us on whatever platform you're listening to, whether that's Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever, just take a second to give us a rating would really help us out. We're kind of slowly growing, and we would love having on all these guests. And we have more guests planned already, but it's always helpful if you give us a bit of love and support. As always, you can find the podcast on Twitter at @OurBackpackers, and individually you can find us at NicholasGRGR and at Iowa_Joe86. Until next time, see you later, guys.